Oh, yes, as you've seen in the introduction there, Mr. Festus Osifo joins us now. He's the president of PENGASSAN. I do not want to go into the name of the full abbreviation there, but it's something at the Petroleum Senior Staff Association of Nigeria. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
so you're welcome to Sunrise Today this morning.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ma'am.
You had expressed great optimism when the PIB was signed and became an act, and a number of people were they had their fears. I think they even had to postpone the implementation of the PIB as a result of this unanswered question on what was going to happen to subsidy. And here we are again. I think I was taking care of last year. This is June 2022, and we're back to fuel scarcity. Has this come as any surprise to you or your association?
No, not necessarily. You know, in the last 6 months or thereabout, so there have been some distortion in the process. As at when the PIA was passed, there was a clause in the PIA that talks about the deregulation of a downstream sector of the oil and gas industry. But at unions in that sector, and largely the TUC and NLC, we all looked at it, that was it really ripe for us to completely deregulate that sector. So there was now negotiation and discussions back and forth before government came out and said they are not willing to go ahead with deregulation as at that time. You saw the statement that the president the interview the president granted to Bloomberg, I think yesterday or thereabout,
yes,
where he was saying that subsidy is here to stay for now. He has quite agreed with some of the points that we raised. You know, some of the points that we raised are the fact that if you remove subsidy as at then, there will be, in fact, inflationary pressure. That before you could go ahead to remove subsidy, why don't we focus much more on local production? That when we produce locally, it's going to remove a lot of bottleneck in the system. So today, what is really causing this problem that we have today? They are basically attributable to about 2 or 3 factors. One, you know, as at when NNPC, they were paying about, as in the ex-depot price of this particular product is about 148 naira as at today. So now there is, in that ex-depot price, you have some costs that are built into it. And one of the costs is the bridging cost. You know, NNPC will collect this bridging fund and remit to the then Petroleum Equalization Fund that is now subsumed under the NMD-PRA, Nigeria Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. So they are now the one performing that function today. So now that money at the end of the day...
Have the institutions been renamed? Have they been renamed
yes,
as stipulated by the PIA?
Yes, a chief executive was appointed sometime last year, and as of today, they have been renamed. In fact, they have even done staff delineation. In fact, as of today, there is no longer PROA. As of today, there is no longer PEF. So you now have NMD-PRA. So NMD-PRA inherited the former PEF, PRA, and the DPRO. They were doing both the upstream and downstream. So the downstream of DPRO has also moved over to NMDPRO with a chief executive and the executive directors all appointed. So they are all functioning as it is today. The same with the upstream commission. They are also functioning as at today. So now that NMDPRO, they are now the one that are administering the bridging fund. So now, at a particular time when they agreed with the truck drivers, so they agreed with them that, okay, the bridging fund is going to be about 10 naira per liter, depending on the destination you are going all over the country. So as when they agreed, the cost of diesel as at that time was about 250 naira. So it was fashionable. The 10 naira was a bit okay. But today, the cost of diesel is over 700 naira. It has tripled. So the expectation from the tanker drivers is that, okay, the cost of diesel has gone up. So instead of you paying me 10 naira 40 kobo as the case may be, you have to multiply it by 3 and you pay me. So that has been the problem. You know, most of these truck drivers, they are not charity organizations. They are there, they cannot...
They're business people.
Yes, they are business people. They are not there for social enterprise. So at the end of the day, that is the first problem. Then, in terms of supply, as of last night, I checked with my members in PPMC and the requisite institutions. As of today, we have close to 2 billion liters, 2 billion liters of PMS. So the problem is not the stock. We have the stock all over, but these truck drivers, most of them are not willing to lift this product because of the problem I just enumerated. Then one of the issue again is also that today NNPC is the sole importer of PMS. So they import PMS into the country, and this PMS is brought to the high sea. So they rent some smaller vessels to bunker the PMS and take to the various tank farms or depots.
The daughter boats.
Yes. So with the daughter vessels. So they take them there. So if it is NNPC depot and you are loading from NNPC depot, you are going to pay about 148 naira as the ex-depot price. But some of the PMS are also stored in private depots. So those private depots, as of today, they don't sell to the retailers for 148. So they add some premium to it. And at the end of the day, they sell between 152, 155, 160. In some cases, they sell 162. So because they are also saying that the cost of their operation has also increased. So if they sell in that amount, it will now be difficult for the retailer to go and sell at about 165. Because you cannot buy a product 162, 163, then you also pay some other transportation cost and your cost of operation, and you are being asked to sell 165. So because of that, some of these retailers, they decline to lift these products, they decline to buy these products. That's why you see a lot of petrol stations are closed today because the retailers are not willing. So this is another factor that is contributing to this current problem. If you remember, when Abuja was facing fuel scarcity, in Lagos, it was still okay because it was okay in Lagos because the tanker drivers, they were okay, the truck owners, they were okay to supply within Lagos. But to move outside Lagos, that is where that bridging comes in, and that has been the problem. So the problem is not that we don't have a stock. There is a stock as confirmed by all indices and all my members that we spoke to yesterday. But the supply chain, the distribution, there is problem along that line.
It's quite telling that Lagos and Abuja are the major places that are, have been highlighted. You talked about when Lagos was still having supply, Abuja was already facing scarcity. Some people say it boils down to the fact that those are the major places where petrol is actually sold at 165 naira.
Correct.
Almost all the other places that have not, that rarely see any scarcity, and in some places they'll tell you, oh, we still have petrol. It is just not sold at 165 naira. Yeah. In fact, we have never bought for 165 naira. What do you think is the way out now for the federal government, which continues to insist on this?
We must define both the short, medium, and long-term approach. The short-term solution as of today is that, yes, we are into subsidy regime, and the government has accepted fully that we are still going to regulate that particular space and that particular industry. So the first thing, which I know discussions are going on, as at yesterday, we were privy to some of the discussions that are going on between government and the tanker drivers. So now they are about moving the bridging fund from about 10.4 to something about 20 naira. So if they do that, although the tanker drivers are still pushing to add something in addition to that. So if they do that, what is going to happen is that the tanker drivers will start loading. And once they start loading, you are going to have PMS, all over the country. That is for the short term. Then another thing that could be done on the short term is also the fact that the regulatory agencies, in this case, the NMDPRA, they should visit these private depot owners and discuss with them and try to enforce and implement the the approved price, so that they will not be selling PMS to retailers at a very exorbitant rate, that most of these retailers cannot sell at 160. Just as you've alluded to. That's why if you go to Owerri, if you go to the eastern part of Nigeria, you see that they have PMS everywhere. And the reason they have that PMS everywhere is attributable to the fact that they sell above 160. So their margin of profit is quite high. And as a business person, you know, you look at your return on investment. So if you are sure that, okay, if I buy this product at 162, 163 from the private depot owners and I can sell 175 without any encumbrance, then I will go ahead and do. So that is why you have PMS in the eastern part and most other parts of Nigeria outside Abuja and Lagos, because you have the regulators present much more in Abuja and in Lagos. Then that is the short term. But in the longer term, we must do everything possible to boost local production. And that has been the yearnings of a trade union. Mahokwe, it will interest you to know that as we have this world energy crisis today, as brought about by the war in Russia and Ukraine, you could see that the countries that are producing PMS, the countries that are producing diesel, the cost of this product in those countries are much more reduced. Let's take diesel, for example. Diesel today is selling for maybe 750, 800 because diesel is deregulated. So if we sell diesel at about 800 naira in Nigeria, when you convert that, that will give us maybe, say, official exchange rate, that will give us about $2 per liter. If you move it to gallon, it will be about $7.56 per gallon. So now, if you check the cost of diesel in the US, because US produces diesel, if you check, you discover that the cost there is somewhere around about $5.70. If you go, they are the highest producer of diesel or the highest refiner of diesel. If you go to China, you are going to discover that is about $4.88. The same thing with India. But if you go to the UK imports about 45% of their diesel from Russia, from Saudi Arabia, Netherlands, and the US. The cost of diesel in the UK, it's over $9.
So production, in-house production is the way to go. Let me flip this to Lagos now, because I know they have questions for you.
Well, thank you, Mahokwe. Just quickly, we thought that this was what subsidy was meant to resolve, essentially to make up for the, the operational cost, or at least pay, those either retailers or depots the difference, so they can still sell at 165 naira, which is the stipulated price. So who is getting this subsidy? Because clearly the retailers, the people lifting, the transporters and all of that aren't getting this subsidy. So who is getting subsidy right now? Who is subsidy being paid to?
Okay, thank you so much. Very good question. As of today, this is how the subsidy system works. So NNPC, we import the PMS. So the landing cost of PMS as of today ought to be in the neighborhood of between about 400 to about 500 naira. So when NNPC buys at about 400 to 500 naira, at the end of the day, the subsidy, but the amount of money that is declared that they buy, maybe it will be around about 110. So the difference between the amount that NNPC spent in buying the PMS from the refiners to the difference with which to the amount they are going to sell, that is where that major subsidy goes to. And you remember very well, as at when the subsidy of 4 trillion was discussed, and as at when the subsidy of 4 trillion was agreed on, when the calculation was done, the landing cost as at then was around 300 to 350 naira. It wasn't what it is today, about 400 to 450 naira. So now there is more pressure. If we go by the data we have today, I could tell you that we will not be spending 4 trillion. We may be spending upward of about 4.5 to 5 trillion in subsidy. So the major bulk of that subsidy goes to to ameliorate or to cater for the difference between the amount of money that the PMS is bought to the amount of money that NNPC supplies to the retailers. That is where that bulk actually goes to. So when that calculation was done, a lot of variables that we have today wasn't there as at then. Because the cost as at that time was much more reduced. If you remember, when we were budgeting for this subsidy as at then, the cost as at that time was the crude oil price as at that time was less than what it is today. Then there wasn't also a distortion in the world supply. So now, that is why today, they are now about to increase the amount of money that is being given to truck owners. And if you are doing that, you are actually increasing the subsidy basket.
Well, I do not know if they still have more questions, but it'll be interesting to see how quickly do you think that this can easily be resolved? I mean, the 20 naira, we understand that 10 naira was initially approved by the president. Yeah. And it doesn't seem to have solved. We thought that that should have ended what we saw, the scarcity in Abuja, but it looked like they decided to start the protest in Lagos. So how quickly do you think that this can easily be resolved? And do you think that the federal government might be willing to add a little more? Because we do not know just how much more the price of petroleum products are going to increase by.
Yeah, as of today, I'm privy to the fact that discussions are going on. They are currently discussing in order to solve the issues of the trucking. But what will finally solve all these, as we have said, is going to be when we refine our product domestically, it will finally put pay to this. So thank God the Dangote refinery is coming, and thank God as well that NNPC has also bought a stake, about 20% stake in the refinery, and today as well, work is going on in the Port Harcourt refinery. So when all these are done, then we will become self-sufficient. So when we are self-sufficient, at the end of the day, it will put to rest all these lingering issues that have been in the petroleum distribution in the last over 30 years now. Yeah, it will put a pay to it at the end of the day.
Well, we have to thank you very much for your time this morning. We certainly will call on you again if we need further explanation. Well, at least from the perspective of PENGASSAN. Thank you so much for coming. Mr. Festus Osifo is the president of PENGASSAN and is speaking to us here in our Abuja studios.